Imagine waking up one morning, checking your phone, and seeing a single news notification that changes everything. It doesn't say there's been a war. It doesn't say there's been a natural disaster. It just says, Goldman Sachs confirms 300 million jobs permanently replaced by AI. And the date on that notification? It's not 2045. It's not even 2035. It's 5 years from right now. Your job, your neighbor's job, your kid's first job, gone. Not outsourced to another country, not automated away slowly over decades, gone, almost overnight. Now here's the question nobody is actually asking. When AI takes every single job on Earth, what happens to us? Before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome. This channel, World Inventions X, is dedicated to exploring the ideas, the technologies, and the turning points that are quietly reshaping the world we live in. We do the deep dives so you don't have to. And if that's something that matters to you, hit subscribe right now. It's free, it costs you nothing, and it genuinely helps a new creator keep making content like this. All right, now let's get into it, because what I'm about to share with you is going to stay with you for a very long time. Let me take you back. Not far, just to 2020. That year, a global pandemic hit, and in a matter of weeks, millions of workers across the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia suddenly found themselves at home, staring at a laptop screen, realizing something uncomfortable. A huge amount of their daily work could actually be done remotely, digitally, without an office, without a commute, without half the structure they thought they needed. At the same time, quietly, almost invisibly, something else was happening. Technology companies around the world were accelerating, fast. The pandemic forced businesses to lean into automation harder and faster than anyone had planned. Self-checkout machines replaced cashiers, chatbots replaced call center workers, delivery drones started being tested in suburbs across the country. And nobody really panicked because there was already so much going on. But here's what's important to understand. That wasn't the real wave. That was just the tide going out. Because in November 2022, something arrived that changed everything. ChatGPT launched to the public, and within 5 days, it had 1 million users. Within 2 months, it had 100 million. It became the fastest growing consumer application in human history. And suddenly, people who had never once thought about artificial intelligence were sitting at their kitchen tables typing questions into a chatbot and getting answers that were frankly frightening in how good they were. Doctors were using it to draft patient letters. Lawyers were using it to summarize case files. Journalists were using it to write first drafts. Programmers were using it to write code. Students were using it to write entire essays. And a slow, creeping realization began to set in, a realization that has been building ever since. What if this thing doesn't just help us do our jobs? What if it eventually does our jobs better than we can? Now, let me be honest with you here. That question is not new. People have been asking it about technology for hundreds of years. When the printing press arrived, scribes panicked. When the Industrial Revolution hit, craftsmen panicked. When computers spread through offices in the 1980s, typists and bookkeepers panicked. And every single time, new jobs emerged to replace the old ones. Humanity adapted. We always have. But here's where this time is genuinely, measurably different. And I really want you to sit with this because it's the thing most people miss. Every previous wave of automation replaced physical work. Machines replaced human muscle. But AI is replacing human thinking, and that changes everything. Because there's a list, a very specific, very detailed list, put together by researchers at Oxford University. And on that list are the jobs most likely to disappear within the next decade. Some of the jobs on that list are going to absolutely shock you. Stay with me. In 2013, 2 Oxford economists, Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne, published a paper that quietly sent shockwaves through every industry on Earth. They analyzed 702 occupations, and they came to a conclusion that still makes people uncomfortable when they read it today. 47% of all jobs in the United States are at high risk of automation within the next 10 to 20 years. Not robots in a factory, not machines on an assembly line. White-collar jobs. professional jobs, jobs people went to university for. Now, the usual suspects are there. Yes, truck drivers are on the list, and taxi drivers, and factory workers, and retail assistants. Nobody's surprised by that anymore. But then you start going deeper into the list, and that's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Radiologists. Doctors who spend years learning to read X-rays and MRI scans. AI can now do that with a higher accuracy rate than most human radiologists. A 2019 study published in Nature Medicine found that an AI system diagnosed certain cancers from images more accurately than a team of 11 expert radiologists. 11, not one, 11 highly trained professionals. Financial analysts, the people who study markets, run models, and tell hedge funds where to put their money. JP Morgan's AI system, called COIN, Contract Intelligence, reviews loan agreements in seconds, work that used to take lawyers 360,000 hours every single year. Done, instantly. Paralegals, junior lawyers, the backbone of legal firms. AI tools can now review contracts, identify risks, cross-reference case law, and generate legal documents faster and more accurately than a human who has just passed the bar exam. Accountants, tax professionals, the people you pay to file your return every year. AI does this now. Not perfectly, not yet, but well enough that the gap is closing with every single software update. And then, and this is the one that stopped me cold when I first read it, journalists, writers, creatives. The Associated Press has been using AI to write earnings reports and sports articles since 2014. Bloomberg uses AI to generate financial news stories. In 2023, a major German publishing house announced it was replacing its editorial staff with AI. A whole newsroom, real human beings with mortgages and families and decades of experience, replaced by a language model. Now at this point you might be thinking, okay, but surely there are jobs AI simply can't do. Jobs that require human connection, empathy, real physical presence. And yes, for now, you'd be right. A nurse sitting with a frightened patient, a therapist listening with real understanding, a teacher who notices that one quiet kid in the back of the class is struggling, a plumber who figures out why your pipes are making that specific noise. These things still require human beings. But here's the uncomfortable truth that researchers are increasingly confronting. Even those jobs, they're not as safe as we think. And the reason why is something nobody in government is talking about seriously enough yet. Because there's a concept that's been quietly spreading through the world's top economics departments, a concept called technological unemployment. And if history is any guide, what happened to one small English town in the 1800s might be the most important warning sign we have for what's coming next. And it's a story most people have never heard.
It's 1811, Nottingham, England. A group of textile workers, skilled craftsmen who had spent their entire lives mastering the art of hand-knitting stockings and lace, start receiving devastating news. Factory owners are installing new power looms, mechanical machines that can do the work of dozens of skilled workers faster, cheaper, and without ever needing a lunch break or a wage. These workers don't just sit quietly and accept it. They organize. They write letters to Parliament. They petition the Crown. And when nobody listens, they go out at night, break into factories, and smash the machines. They became known as the Luddites. And for 200 years, that word has been used as an insult, a shorthand for people who are irrationally afraid of technology, people who are too ignorant or too scared to embrace progress. But here's the thing history books don't always mention. Those workers weren't wrong. For an entire generation, 20 to 30 years, the standard of living for working-class people in England dropped. Real wages fell. Poverty rose. Children went to work in dangerous factories for pennies. Communities fell apart. The jobs the machines created, factory jobs, were harder, more dangerous, and paid less than the skilled craft work they replaced. It wasn't until decades later that economic growth from industrialization spread broadly enough to lift living standards again. And that gap, that 20 or 30-year window of real human suffering between the old economy and the new one,
that is what serious economists are worried about today. Because with AI, that window could be longer and wider and harder. When steam engines replaced human muscle, at least human minds were still needed to run the factories, manage the accounts, design the machines, and write the contracts. When AI replaces human minds, when it can think, reason, write, analyze, and create, what exactly is left for humans to contribute economically? This isn't a fringe question anymore. In 2023, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, released a report stating that AI will affect 40% of jobs globally. In advanced economies like the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, that number jumps to 60%. 60% of all jobs touched by AI in some meaningful way within this decade. And the authors of that report weren't writing it as a celebration. They were writing it as a warning. Now, here's where I want to be honest with you, because I think there's a temptation when talking about this topic to either catastrophize completely or to wave it all away with, "Don't worry, new jobs will appear." And the truth is more complicated and more interesting than either of those things. There are new jobs appearing: prompt engineers, AI trainers, machine learning specialists, automation consultants. Roles that didn't exist 5 years ago are now paying six-figure salaries. The World Economic Forum estimates that AI will create 97 million new jobs by 2025. But here's the problem, and it's a big one. Those 97 million new jobs require skills that the 85-year-old retired nurse doesn't have, that the 52-year-old lorry driver doesn't have, that the 38-year-old paralegal who just got made redundant doesn't have. Yet, retraining takes time, it takes money, it takes access to education. And historically, governments are slow, businesses are fast, and the people caught in between pay the price. But what if there's a different answer entirely? What if the solution isn't more jobs, but no jobs? What if the real question we should be asking isn't how do we protect employment, but what does humanity do when employment is no longer the point? Because some of the world's smartest people are already living in that future, and what they've found there is not what you'd expect. Here's a thought experiment I want you to sit with. Imagine it's the year 2045. AI handles almost everything. It runs hospitals, it drives every vehicle, it writes the news, it manages the power grid, it designs buildings, writes software, does surgery, handles logistics, manages investments, and yes, even makes films and music and art. Not perfectly, but well enough. In this world, the economy is still producing enormous amounts of wealth. Goods are cheaper than ever, services are faster than ever, productivity is through the roof. But almost none of that wealth flows through wages anymore because there aren't many wages to speak of. Is that a dystopia or a utopia? And your answer to that question, I'd argue, depends almost entirely on one thing: who owns the AI? Because if the AI is owned by a small group of corporations and billionaires and the profits flow only to them, then what you get is something that looks like science fiction but feels like feudalism. A tiny, ultra-wealthy class at the top, everyone else dependent on scraps. That's the nightmare scenario. And it's not impossible. But there's another version. A version some economists, philosophers, and even a few politicians are starting to talk about seriously. What if we redesigned the system? What if the productivity gains from AI were shared broadly through something like a universal basic income or a robot tax or public ownership of critical AI infrastructure? What if, instead of everyone scrambling for the remaining jobs, we simply worked less? A 4-day week became 3 days, then 2, and the time freed up wasn't wasted. It was filled with the things humans have always done when they weren't working for survival: art, community, family, learning, rest, exploration, connection. This isn't a new idea. In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes predicted that by 2030, advances in productivity would mean people in wealthy nations would work only 15 hours a week. He was wrong about the timeline, but was he wrong about the direction? There are places in the world right now running universal basic income pilots. Finland ran one. Kenya has been running one. Stockton, California ran one. And the findings are consistently surprising to people who expect the worst. People don't stop working when you give them a guaranteed income. They work differently. They take risks. They start businesses. They go back to school. They spend more time with their children. Mental health improves. Community engagement goes up. In Stockton's pilot, full-time employment among recipients actually increased compared to the control group. Now, I'm not here to tell you UBI is the answer. It may not be. The economics are genuinely complicated, and smart people disagree about it strongly. But the point is this: we are standing at a fork in the road, and the path we take is not being chosen by AI. It's being chosen by us, by the decisions governments make, by the values societies hold, by whether we choose to see this moment as a threat or as an opportunity. Because here's the thing about humanity that always gets lost in these conversations about automation and AI and the end of work. We are not just economic units. We are not just our jobs. The idea that human worth is tied to employment is actually a relatively recent invention, and it's one we've never fully examined. For most of human history, people worked to live. Somewhere in the industrial age, we started living to work. And that shift has cost us things we haven't fully accounted for. Mental health crises, loneliness epidemics, burnout at scale. What if AI, in taking our jobs, actually gives us something back? What if the greatest challenge of the AI age isn't figuring out how to compete with machines? It's figuring out who we are when we're not defined by what we do for money.
Now, here's the twist I promised you at the start. All of this, everything I've described, the fear, the displacement, the opportunity, the philosophical reckoning, all of it has happened before. Not with AI, but with something equally profound: the invention of writing. When writing was invented thousands of years ago, a class of people called memory keepers, oral historians, storytellers, priests who memorized sacred texts became almost entirely obsolete. Their entire value to society was the ability to hold and transmit knowledge. Writing made that unnecessary. Overnight, in historical terms, their function disappeared. But here's what actually happened. Writing didn't diminish humanity, it expanded it. It made it possible to build science, philosophy, law, literature, medicine. It gave us Shakespeare, it gave us Newton, it gave us the Declaration of Independence and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It unlocked something in us that oral tradition alone could never have reached. And maybe, that's what AI is. Not the end of human purpose, but the next writing. The next tool that forces us to discover what we're actually for beyond the practical. The next pressure that reveals how much more we're capable of. Or maybe I'm being too optimistic. Maybe the disruption this time really is too fast, too wide, too deep. Maybe the suffering in between is too real to be romanticized. Maybe we'll get this badly wrong. And that, right there, is the question that genuinely keeps serious thinkers up at night. Not, will AI take our jobs? We're already past that question. The answer is yes, many of them, and soon. The real question is, what do we choose to do about it? And who decides? I want to know what you think. Genuinely, do you believe AI will ultimately free humanity or destroy the sense of purpose that holds us together? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this video made you think, if it gave you something to chew on, please share it with someone you know who needs to hear this conversation. Because the more people who are informed and engaged on this topic, the better the decisions we make collectively are going to be. If you're new here, subscribe to World Inventions X right now. We cover the ideas that matter, the technology, the history, the human story behind it all. And there is so much more coming. I'll see you in the next one.